Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're digging into Ruthless Nature by CIAN Brownlee, and let me tell you, it's a game changer. I don't know about you, but I've definitely had my share of plant parenting fails. You know, showering them with love only to watch them wither. This book throws out the rule book on why that happens.
It's a real perspective shift. See, this book isn't about what plants want.
Because, let's be honest, they're not picking out throw pillows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the environmental constraints that dictate where they can actually survive.
Constraints.
Yeah, constraints.
So instead of creating a plant's dream home, we should be figuring out what could kill it off.
Precisely. And get this, Brownlee uses this brilliant analogy of the Mississippi River Basin.
Okay.
You'd think with all that sunshine, the water, the fertile soil, total plant paradise, right?
Right.
But only a fraction of species actually thrive there.
Really?
Because of those hidden constraints, the things that make it a no-go zone.
Okay, so it's like Survivor for plants.
Exactly.
It's not about what they like, it's about what they can handle. But how do we even begin to decode these hidden constraints?
Ruthless Nature breaks it down into 4 key areas. You've got your soil, your water, light, and get this, your microbes.
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 Hold on. There's a whole microscopic party happening in the soil that affects whether my plants live or die.
Oh yeah, a whole ecosystem down there. But first, let's dig into the soil for a second.
Okay.
It's not just about what you see on the surface.
Right.
Brownlee really emphasizes 3 key aspects, and those are the physical and chemical makeup, that often overlooked world of soil microbes,
Right.
and the importance of humus.
Humus. That rings a bell. Didn't messing with that lead to the Dust Bowl?
Absolutely. Big cautionary tale.
Yeah.
The Dust Bowl really showed us how vital humus is for soil health, providing structure, nutrients, and, of course, a home for those all-important microbes.
Okay, let's talk about these microbes. You're saying these tiny organisms are like the unsung heroes of the plant world.
They're more like essential partners.
Yeah.
Think of it like our gut bacteria.
God.
Plants rely on these microbes to help them absorb nutrients. Transplanting to the wrong soil can disrupt that whole delicate balance, even if the soil looks fine on the surface. It's like swapping out their favorite restaurant for one with a totally different menu. They might not thrive on that.
So that's why buying local native plants is so crucial. They come with that ready-made community of microbial allies. They've already got a reservation at the best restaurant in town. But what about water? I always thought it was as simple as, rainfall. But I'm guessing it's way more complicated than that.
You're right. Brownlee dives into how water availability, how it moves, it all shapes those plant communities. He highlights these 3 key aspects: volume, pattern, and flow.
Okay.
So volume, that's the total amount of water a site gets annually. Pattern refers to when that water arrives. Think consistent rainfall versus like those intense downpours.
Okay, so even if 2 places get the same amount of rain, the timing of it can make all the difference.
Huge difference. And then there's flow, which is all about how water moves through the landscape. Soil type and topography play a big role here. A steep, rocky slope is going to drain way faster than, say, a flat area with clay-rich soil.
So a plant that loves that rocky slope with the fast drainage might drown in that clay-rich area, even if they both get the same amount of rainfall.
Exactly.
That's wild.
It is. And Brownlee illustrates this really well with these 2 West Virginia peaks, Spruce Mountain and North Fork Mountain.
Okay.
Geographically close, but their moisture profiles are totally different.
Wow.
It makes them distinct ecosystems, one a haven for all those moisture-loving species, while the other is surprisingly dry, supporting a whole other set of plants. So you see, even those subtle differences in water can create dramatically different plant communities.
It's amazing how these seemingly small variations create such diverse environments. Okay, we've covered soil, we've covered water. What about light? Is it as straightforward as sunny versus shady?
Oh, there's more to it than meets the eye.
Okay.
Brownlee, he points out that light patterns are also influenced by things like, you've got neighboring plants casting shade,
Right.
what they call canopy cover. Then there's the direction a slope faces. A south-facing slope is bathed in way more direct sunlight compared to a north-facing one. And even the steepness of that slope matters, impacting both the light exposure and how that water drains.
So a plant loving full sun in an open field might be miserable in the dappled shade of a forest, even if they're in the same region. It's all about those microenvironments.
You got it. Understanding that unique interplay of soil, water, and light in a specific location is key to choosing plants that are actually going to thrive.
This is mind-blowing stuff. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's circle back to those microbes for a sec. You mentioned there's this whole hidden world beneath our feet impacting our plant success. Tell me more about that.
So we've got this whole invisible world under our feet that can make or break our gardening game, huh? I mean, it's like we've been missing half the story this whole time.
It's true. We focus so much on what's going on above ground, but those soil microbes, they're like the unsung heroes of a truly thriving garden, you know? They're essential. Nutrient cycling, disease suppression, even helping plants tolerate stress. It's all them.
Okay, so how do we keep these little microbial buddies happy? Is it as simple as tossing some compost on there? Compost is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It's a great start.
Yeah.
Introduces those beneficial microbes, adds organic matter to the soil, but, ruthless nature, it takes it a step further. Brownlee reminds us that out in nature, plants, they've evolved alongside these specific microbial communities in their native habitats. It's a whole thing.
So a plant that's plucked straight from a meadow might not have that same microbial support system in my little suburban backyard.
Exactly. It's imagine moving to a new city and realizing, oh, I left my entire social network behind. You might technically survive, but will you really thrive without your crew? Probably not. That's why sourcing plants locally is so crucial. They come with that ready-made community of microbial allies. They can hit the ground running, so to speak.
Wow, it's amazing how interconnected it all is. Speaking of connections, you teased this whole 8-12 rule thing earlier. What's that all about?
Ah, yes. This is where Brownlee throws everyone for a loop. We're always told diversity is key. More species equals a healthier ecosystem.
All right.
But the 8-12 rule, it kind of challenges that, It suggests that in any given environment, a mere 8 to 12 plant species are going to make up the vast majority, around 80% of what you actually see.
Wait, hold on. Only 8 to 12 species. That seems incredibly low.
I know, right? Sounds counterintuitive. But Brownlee's observations, they suggest that true biodiversity, it isn't about cramming in every single type of plant you can find. It's about identifying those core species, the ones best suited to that particular place. The ones that have evolved to not just survive, but to thrive there.
So quality over quantity. Find those all-star players who are meant to be there.
Exactly. Think of it like building a house. You wouldn't use flimsy materials that can't handle the weight or the elements, right?
Yes.
You need that strong foundation built on materials that are up to the task. Plants, it's the same idea.
That's a great analogy. So how do we figure out who those core species are for our own garden?
Well, Brownlee, he uses this fascinating example, the alvar.
The alvar.
Yeah, it's this incredibly harsh environment, rocky, exposed. You've got these extreme temperature swings, the works, but it supports this remarkably resilient plant community.
So even in this hardcore environment, the 8-12 rule, it still holds up?
Oh, it does. Only a handful of species can actually hack it in the alvar, and those are the ones that dominate. But here's the thing, Brownlee. He noticed this pattern in other environments too. Forests, meadows, you name it. He encourages us to really observe, Go to a local park, even your own backyard. Chances are you'll notice that a small number of species, they're the real heavy lifters out there.
This is blowing my mind. I'm suddenly seeing my whole neighborhood in a new light. I always thought, the more plants, the merrier. But now I'm realizing it's about finding the ones that are really meant to be there.
It's a whole different way of thinking about gardening.
Yeah.
And honestly, it has huge implications for sustainability too. By focusing on those core species, we're working with nature, not against it.
So instead of trying to create some kind of botanical zoo in our gardens, we should be aiming for a more targeted, resilient ecosystem, right?
Precisely. And that brings us to another really important point Brownlee makes. It's not just about keeping those plants alive. It's about making sure they can reproduce, that they'll be there for generations to come.
Right. We're talking about creating a self-sustaining ecosystem, and that's got to be where seed germination comes in.
You got it.
Yeah.
I mean, we often take it for granted, right? Sprinkle some seeds, water them, hope for the best. But ruthless nature, it really pulls back the curtain on how complex this whole process actually is.
Okay, so what's the hidden complexity behind a seed sprouting?
Well, it turns out those little seeds, they often have very specific requirements. Some need certain temperature cycles. Others actually need to pass through an animal's digestive system. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Talk about a wild ride. And then you've got some that need to lie dormant for years before they're ready. It's incredible.
nature is full of surprises. It's
Yeah.
like every seed comes with its own instruction manual.
Absolutely. And it's all nature's way of making sure those seeds germinate in exactly the right spot at exactly the right time. It's a survival mechanism honed over like millennia.
This makes me realize how much I totally underestimated those little packets of plant power. It also really highlights why buying locally sourced seeds or plants is so important.
Absolutely. Those seeds, they're already adapted to your regions, like unique germination cues, giving them that home field advantage.
Okay, so we've got our core species, we're buying local, we're paying attention to germination. What else do we need to know to actually create that thriving, self-sustaining landscape?
Brownlee, he gives us this really practical framework in the book. He calls it the Maxims method. It's a 10-step process that really anyone can use. You can be a seasoned gardener or a total newbie. It's designed to be accessible.
The Maxims method. Okay, tell me more.
So it all starts with what Brownlee calls seeing the weeds and noting the natives.
Okay.
Basically, it's about really observing your site. What's the soil like? Where does the water tend to flow? What plants are already thriving there? These are like your clues.
Like being the plant detective.
Exactly. You're gathering clues to solve the case of what will actually grow there.
I love it. So what's next?
Well, once you have a good understanding of your site, then you can dive into some research. Local soil maps, plant communities in your region, that sort of thing. You're combining your own observations with like the wisdom of those who've studied these ecosystems.
Okay, so channeling our inner Sherlock Holmes with a little bit of like botany knowledge thrown in.
Exactly.
I like it. Then what?
Then, armed with all this knowledge, you can start choosing your plants in this whole new light. It's not just about what looks pretty anymore. It's about understanding which plants can handle the specific conditions and constraints of your site. Brownlee, he even recommends doing like a test planting.
Yeah.
Just a few of each species before you go all in.
Smart. It's like a plant audition. See who makes the cut.
Exactly. And then finally, he emphasizes buying from those restoration nurseries. They specialize in growing native plants from local seed sources, which, as we've been saying, is so crucial.
This has been so eye-opening, but before we move on, I gotta ask, what about those of us who are ready to get our hands dirty, literally, like the nitty-gritty details of soil?
Oh, there's a lot to uncover there.
Yeah.
In fact, Brownlee, he tackles some big misconceptions about topsoil. And trust me, it's way more interesting than it sounds.
Okay, topsoil. I'll admit, I kind of thought it was like one of those things you just grab a bag of at the store.
Right, just sprinkle it around.
Yeah, but now I'm intrigued.
Yeah, this is the big one. Brownlee, he really tackles this myth of topsoil as this like generic one-size-fits-all solution.
Oh, I have totally fallen for that. So what's the real deal then?
Well, there's no such thing as generic topsoil. It's not like baking a cake,
Right.
You can't just swap out all-purpose for cake flour and expect the same result. Topsoil, it's incredibly diverse.
Okay.
We're talking thousands of varieties, each with its own like unique composition and properties.
Thousands of types of topsoil. Seriously.
Yeah.
I had no idea. It's
Yeah.
wild,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Each of those varieties, they've evolved over time to support a specific set of plants.
So using the wrong topsoil is like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. You might get it in there, but
Exactly. And Brownlee, he argues that, honestly, this lack of understanding about topsoil is a big reason why so many landscaping projects they totally flop.
interesting.
Designers, they just specify topsoil. They don't think about what the plants actually need or, the existing soil.
It's like a recipe with a missing ingredient.
Yes.
You might end up with something, but it's not going to be good.
Exactly. So how do we avoid this topsoil trap? It comes back to observation and research. Brownlee recommends getting to know your soil. Study those local soil maps. Maybe even do a soil test. Figure it out.
Time to channel our inner soil sleuth.
Crack the code of our backyards.
Yes. And then once you have a handle on what you've got, you can match it to those plants you want to grow.
Okay.
It's about working with nature, not trying to force something that doesn't belong.
That makes a lot of sense. But what if you just can't find, the right topsoil locally?
Brownlee mentions there's actually a growing industry of soil blenders.
Soil blenders?
Yeah, they can create these, custom soil mixes based on your needs.
Wow, so it's like personalized plant nutrition.
Exactly.
That's amazing. It really highlights just how much we need to kind of shift our thinking about all this. It's not just dirt. It's, like you said, it's the foundation of that healthy ecosystem. This whole deep dive into ruthless nature has honestly been eye-opening.
It's a real game changer. Brownlee, he gives us this whole new framework for understanding how plants really thrive.
Yeah.
And It empowers us to make, smarter, more sustainable choices.
I'm feeling very inspired to look at my own garden, my local plant communities with fresh eyes, really be more observant, do my research, and connect with nature on this deeper level.
That's what it's all about. And who knows, maybe by using these principles, we can all create these little pockets of thriving, resilient ecosystems right in our own backyards.
That's a goal worth striving for. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive, but I want to encourage everyone listening to check out Ruthless Nature for themselves. Seriously, it's a book that will stay with you.
I totally agree.
And in the meantime, everyone listening, keep observing, keep asking questions, keep exploring. This natural world, it's full of surprises. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time.